Well, hey, everybody. Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about disinformation after our show introduction. Jeff is very well read on the subject. He's got some exciting information to share with all of us today. It's a timely topic leading up to our elections coming up here on November 3rd, which is 4 days away, and one that we'll be revisiting throughout all of our broadcasts. We invite everyone to enjoy and share our research. Hope that you will ask questions and include your comments in it. We will address your comments live. And if you are watching this as a rebroadcast, we invite you to email us at porcupinepundit@gmail.com. If you have problems spelling porcupine or pundit, let me know. Let's start our show and on media, government, and disinformation.
We want to get it on because we don't get along. We want to get it on because we don't get along.
What up? What up? Oh, yeah. Well, here I stand with the mic in my hand, and I will pray to the Lord. I do the best that I can, 'cause in a world where possession is a question of a man's word, but we all have to stand in the shirt. So I'm sticking around, and I'll be dropping it down. I'll be kicking my sound just like a smoke. Never quit because it makes my family grow. I will get me out of this one more time, and I say, can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out of here? Can you help me? Can you help me get the hell out? One for the money and two for the show. Three to get ready to bust down your door. And into one for the money and two for the show. Three to get ready to bust down your door. And then the boom, boom, pack up my screw down so that I never ever quit. People hitting like a tap with the boom, boom, pack up my screw down so that I never ever quit.
Well, today's show is going to be involving today's show is going to be involving disinformation. A lot of it is planned. It's got a history behind it, and it's used politically and it's used motivationally to change us. Not only is it used in the disinformation is used in propagandizing political things, but it's also used in business things to try to get you to get products and services that you may not particularly need, or especially at the prices that they want you to pay out for it. And that goes with politically too. You might have a lot of things that they're trying to sell you and increase your taxes and fees that you really don't need to, especially at the prices that they're trying to crank it up for. And the things go to unintended, the expenses go to unintended, people, businesses, interests, things that you didn't intend your money to go toward to begin with. And today I'd like to start out with the actual definition of propaganda. Information, especially of biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Now, with it in today's culture, we have to look at our mainstream media and some of the news channels that are out there. We have ABC, NBC, CBS, the big three, and Fox has also come onto the scene. There's a newcomer, One American News, I like watching, but all of them seem to have a little bit of a flavor of propaganda, being that their news is used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. I don't see anything as being real neutral or unbiased by any account. And this is going to be a particular problem because they're trying to make the decisions for you rather than you coming up to your own conclusions and decisions based on information provided. This is something that we were all taught in school. I know in the 60s, 70s, even in the 80s, we were taught that the news was going to come across unbiased. We were going to get information, gather that information, and come to our own conclusions. And that's something that's not being done. Even the personalities now are saying that's their job, is to form our opinions and form our worldview, and that is kind of a shame. When I was talking to Jeff earlier today, we were discussing about in American history how far back all of this really comes about and comes to fruition, and a lot of this does come from as early as the late 1700s when the country was formed. Well, let's think back to the printing press, when they had the printing presses starting to get into fashion, and we had Benjamin Franklin, who really was a genius at making a point, and he did it with humor. He did it by pointing out the absurd. He would oftentimes have people use their he needs the link to get in. I sent them the link. I'll see if I can send it to him again. Okay. But, okay. Sorry about that. We've got a little bit of work here to do. All right. All right. I think that'll do it for us. Sorry about that. We've got some little technical things we're trying to get through to us. Let's see if I can do this a second way. Let's see here. And that way, I don't know if there's another thing. There he is. Unmute yourself, buddy.
Unmute myself.
Oh, you're in.
Not showing as muted.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought I sent that into Messenger.
Most people tell me to shut up. So.
Well, I was just getting to the part where you and I had discussed earlier, where we were starting with the printing press, going as far back as the formation of the country and the printing press, and already before we even declared independence, we had Benjamin Franklin, and his printing press was already, with the genius that he used of humor, of using the opposition's words against them, was already using kind of a word science politically in a way, shape, or form, in order to garner up and gather the colonists' ideals about independence, which is a completely foreign idea at the time.
Sure, and if you look, you had bias in the media at that time, because many of the people, the colonists, supported remaining a part of England, while some preferred to become a separate country. For example, Sam Adams was a big supporter of forming an independent country, whereas I would say perhaps 85% of the founding fathers would have preferred representation and have remained part of England. But what you had with, Sam Adams would produce pamphlets, literature, newspapers, flyers, stick on the Liberty Tree, which were very antagonistic and, wanting to drum up these negative feelings. Whereas the British-backed newspapers would show the same things as some kind of positive advancement for the colonies and the people. So yeah, from even before, and I think it's existed since the prints existed, that you have bias on both sides. But that's one thing, because I think that you're going to have people that with different ideologies, different beliefs, wanting to read from different sources. It's always going to exist. But
True.
where it really changes is when it's used to convince the entire population that what's going on is something that doesn't even exist. You know, it's
Well,
basically.
and you were
Go
using
ahead.
an example with us, 4 presidents down. It didn't take us that long in order for us to start having that come into our politics.
Yeah, what's interesting with that is that the government had enacted, of course, now that I'm trying to think of it, I can't, had enacted the, not heresy, sedition acts, which
Mm-hmm.
were limiting free speech. And Jefferson fought against the sedition acts and the limiting of free speech because whenever possible, he chose to side with the people. He felt that the people, in the long run, would obviously be better at living their own lives and governing themselves than a big government could. So after removing those and running for president, the amount of disinformation that was released about him, saying he wasn't Christian, which was, if you weren't Christian, you weren't going to get elected or hold office during those times. It was part of the culture.
Yeah.
And he actually tried to use the sedition acts that he had fought against to stop the lies and manipulation about himself. So, you know, the disinformation's gone on for a long time. And from there, once you start getting into moving on down the road and into, say, I'm going to go ahead and skip a couple of, a full century or so and go to the late or early 1900s, late 1800s, with the creation of the progressive liberalism,
Mm-hmm.
which is communism and socialism. That's all it ever has been.
Yeah.
And we're well aware of the disinformation that they've been responsible for since they were created. And even that, I would consider simply, you know, two different views or different views being expressed. You know, move forward again to say the Germany and Hitler and the PSYOP campaign that they ran.
1930s. Goebbels is probably the genius pioneer behind a lot of the techniques that are used today.
Correct. And that's where the media in America also, and not only media, the government and people who are supporters of Marxism and Leninism, and that's where they started got the idea to use these same campaigns on the American people. And I think it's being used worldwide today, obviously,
Yes.
honestly. I mean,
No,
the entire
absolutely.
world shut down for a virus that turns out to have a mortality rate closer to the influenza than to the Hunter virus, then somebody's manipulating the entire world.
Yeah. Well, and just jumping ahead, there's been some recent articles and commentary about how, the influenza things that we've had with COVID-19 kind of tied in with the United States saying we're going to defund the national organization, the World, not the World Congress. Yeah.
World,
the World, the
League of Nations,
WHO. Yeah. and so on. And that we're actually going to step away because they've been siphoning, these organizations have been siphoning through New York, has been siphoning so many hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars out of the United States taxpayers' pockets year after year, and using it against us and using it against our particular special interests.
Yeah, and if you'll look at the I'll have to call it the League of Nations.
Well, we're old school.
Yeah,
United Nations.
I'm not that old yet. Yeah, United Nations. You know, they have their the division that's responsible for goodness, I apologize. You know, humanities. So it was called. I can't remember the exact term, unfortunately. And I believe there are people in there from places like communist China where millions of people were murdered, and from countries where they say it's okay to marry a 12-year-old child. and these are the people that are in charge of the humanities.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a big waste, and it's a big part of the problem.
Yeah. Human rights. Yeah. They're
Human
the
rights.
biggest violators are that we put in charge, which is the oxymoron that is that organization. Yeah.
But the psyops is being run, and everybody's being told that they're seriously concerned about human rights.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's crazy.
When you have a laptop from the son of a vice president and a signature on a form where he dropped it off, it's been inspected and been proven to be correct and real information, and the media won't cover it. Why is that?
That's a good question.
Let's get the biggest story in the history of the country, right?
It should. Let's get back and let's discuss that after a small break, and we'll be right back.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. Be the someone who gives their time. Be the someone who lends an ear. Be the someone who takes a step. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN, asking you to join the fight against sexual violence and volunteer in your community. Log on to RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org, to learn how you can be the someone.
This message brought to you by the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network and this station.
Well, you were just bringing it up. We just had Tucker Carlson interviewed Mr. Babalowski. Yes. Yeah. And he gave details. He had everything that was laid out. And he was also explaining how and why they were able to quash this information from getting out. Even Carlson admitted that he was having a hard time getting Fox to agree to let him air this. I mean, what kind of pressures? I mean, this is absolutely amazing.
Well, and it's not just that. I mean, I posted a photo of Hunter and Joe Biden, along with one of the, I believe, board members for the Ukrainian oil company that Joe said he never talked to, never met, didn't have any involvement with. All I'm standing on the golf course. Within an hour, there was an overlay saying that this information wasn't correct. So I went to the fact checker site to find out what they considered incorrect about the photo, and they said that the person is a board member and that's not a boss.
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
So I mean, what we're getting here, and these are things that are very important, but very small in the grand scheme. What's going to happen is that these people that are supporting this and believe that it's going to be a utopia, once it's implemented in the country and they realize what a nightmare they've actually created, they're going to be disenfranchised, and therefore become a threat to the government, and they'll be some of the first eliminated.
That's true. Now, you sent me an interesting article from the RAND Corporation talking about the need to focus on modern political warfare. Now, this was actually a document where the RAND Corporation identified and said, okay, modern political warfare is there. It exists. This is their interpretation of it and what they recommend for defenses on it. Does that sound like a fair analysis of what this paper was?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And in it, I found a couple things that were very interesting, and things I'd known or understood, that there are a couple things when they talk about white operations and black operations, which has those are nothing racial overtones to it. White operations are just propaganda. And
gray operation.
Yeah. And black ops are psychological warfare. So that's the spectrum we have, is just propaganda where they're coming right out and doing it in the open. And then black ops is psychological warfare where they're doing it insidiously behind closed doors with different ways to do
overt versus overt.
Yeah. And then, like you were saying, there's this gray area in between that's going in there, and that gray area is they call it the gray zone, is the realm of conflict. And with it, as they go in, realm of conflict, that is pretty much social media.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
okay.
You know, we mentioned the printing press earlier, and we're very fortunate that that was invented. That's what allowed the people to, but prior to the printing press, books were created by scribes written by hand. Very expensive to produce and to own, and were pretty much the realm of the royalty or ruling class at that time. With the advent of the printing press, it allowed the people to become educated and to have access to books and literature that they could not have had before. They could learn to read and write and apply it in their lives. And it improved our standard of living for the average person significantly. But the biggest thing that can be used to fight against these psyops is education. Education is the key to liberty. Majority of these people that are following this stuff went to a school that was run by radical leftists, were taught that the founding principles of the country are terrible and that the virtues of socialism are amazing, even though 220 million people have been killed in the last century due to mostly communism and socialism after being disarmed. And I'm going to go here. I apologize in advance. I also mentioned that, the Nazi propaganda used during World War II. Well, you could take, it's the same philosophy that's being used today for the disinformation. You could take the brown shirts from Germany and call it the education system in America run by radical leftist Marxists.
Yeah.
That's the people rioting in the streets and burning and looting. They were taught that this is okay in their school systems.
Yeah.
That they're fighting for their freedom and liberty, and it's the exact opposite. And then it goes on. You could take the whatever movement you want and substitute for Nazi, and then the people that they're blaming for everything.
And a victimizer. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, so you could basically take the Nazi playbook for propaganda and go piece by piece, and it will match what's going on in this country today.
Yeah.
And we know the results of that form of socialism, the same as every other form of socialism.
Well, they were pointing out that Russia has been preeminent in the use of propaganda for years, for obfuscation rather than persuasion. And they take that, like you were saying, the recipe, create a victim class, and then create a victimizer class. And then therefore the focus is on the victimizer class and not on the whatever the problem is that you're trying to solve. Instead of solving a problem, you victimize, or you make victimizers that you can attack. Not attack a problem, attack a group of people. And usually it's a group of people that have a little bit of power, a little bit of influence, whatever it is that you're trying to get hold of.
I'll give you the perfect example. In America, it's the white European culture that's the problem. Forget the fact that the majority of the founding principles are based on Christianity, which is equality in the eyes of God. Forget the fact that the majority of the white European culture was responsible for ending 4,000 years of slavery and was founded on the idea of ending slavery. There was a deleted paragraph in the Declaration of Independence that would have freed all the slaves. It was removed in committee and almost stopped the country from being formed.
Yeah.
But because if we would have stayed a part of England, slavery would have continued to be legal. Not creating a separate country would not have done anything to free them up.
And then
they had a better chance of being free if we were a new country,
Yeah. And then you have progressive historians that are trying to paint Thomas Jefferson as a racist.
Yes.
And then you have what real history has, where he almost got us to the point where we eliminated slavery at the founding of our country.
Correct. And part of the reason for that is the Protestant Reformation and the formation of, say, Quaker law was very important in the colonies.
Yeah.
It was the framework, the prototype for our laws. So you have Quakers, which were founded on as abolitionists and also champions of women's rights. They had women deacons in the 1500s, which was beyond anything. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you take the actual culture and compare to what they're claiming, there's no similarities whatsoever.
Yeah.
And what I wanted the point that I wanted to make that people may not understand is that what we've been seeing over the last few years and what the Russians have mentioned over the last 30, 40 years, transforming the country, what we're seeing today is more so the end result of 100 plus years of socialism. You know, when they put Bernie Sanders up and they had to change the rules to keep him from being the Democrat nominee for president, they knew that they had implemented enough socialism into this country to where they could move forward to the next part of the scheme. And that's why you're getting the victims, victimizers, the riots, burning and the looting. This is the culmination. Now, Hitler himself, many would claim, was not a socialist. And that may be the case. But, I'm gonna say that they're right, okay, and that he's not socialist. He came to power from within a socialist system. He is the end result. And that's what we will end up with if we continue down this same road.
Right.
It ends in dictatorship.
Well, absolutely. And we can talk about the National Socialism and is still just a flavor of socialism in another time. But yes, you will have a group of Marxists that are trying to put the fascists as a non-socialist, but they're still Marxists. The National Socialists are still Marxists. It's still a Marxist movement. It's just a competition of who is going to have the state and run the companies. And
BLM was formed by two college students that were both Marxists.
Yeah.
And what's ironic about that is Karl Marx was one of the biggest racists in that time period. He claimed that they were subhuman. He would say, "Oh, that person has to have a N in them because of the shape of their head."
Yeah.
So these guys are saying that they're fighting for freedom and liberty and equality, but they're basing their entire movement on a political view that was created by a man that saw them as subhuman.
Well, that's and Goebbels, like we were going back, the architect of all this propaganda and the psyops of language. He was a great student of Marx and Hegel, and trying to form the psychology behind Nazism.
There's a very interesting video available from a survivor of the World Germans, Nazi Germany, Austrian Jew, and she said that, and during that time, radio, of course, existed, but wasn't widespread throughout the world. Not every home had one, especially not in Austria, I would assume, because this was based on what she said. What the Germans did was drop radios that were locked to the Nazi propaganda frequency. Cut it on, but you can't change the station.
Oh.
And it was broadcasting how wonderful life was in Germany, how great they had everything, what a beautiful system this was. It's the actual utopia that everybody's been hoping for. And Austria basically just joined willingly.
Yeah.
But then once the radios had done their job and Germany had control, what they got wasn't quite what was advertised on the radio.
Yes.
And that's what we're facing here today. We have multiple channels we can turn to, but they're all singing the same propaganda song.
That's right.
Now you have Republicans saying, "Well, we are not socialists." Tell me, when in our country, since Woodrow Wilson, we've had more socialism implemented in America than we have in the last 6 months.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely.
So, if you want to go back to Woodrow Wilson, the Marxism and the problems that it's caused within our country, even though Wilson signed those bills into law, those were introduced into Congress by Republicans.
Yes. Yep.
Okay? So part of the disinformation that we're seeing is convincing one side that they're against socialism and supporting a person who's implemented more socialism than anybody since Wilson. And
That's
I don't
right.
understand how can you logically justify that action.
That's it. And they're doing such these persuaders, these propagandists are doing such a magnificent job in getting the people to believe in the left right, the false left right dichotomy. Yeah. That it's just it is absolutely amazing that people still buy into it. Even today, they'll trumpet it all the time. And they were another thing that the Rand study was talking about is how that the propaganda group will target audiences with different messages, and I'll get to the punchline of this in a little bit, but they use violence in emotive language for the Iranians. They would use violence in emotive language literally in Arabic media productions to mobilize for the rank and file members. However, in the English language channels, there's a more restrained, refined, and international in its focus, meaning, we're the religion of peace and love. But we see this in our publications and so on here in America too. Time Magazine is a classic one. They would have different covers for their magazine depending on the geographic area that it was going out to.
Correct.
Yeah.
And, as much as I disagree with putting out two separate messages from one source, Time Magazine is not really news. It's, and even the news isn't it for profit. And Jefferson said, well, they got to put these headlines in or they won't sell their papers. He understood what the purpose was of them lying about him and attacking him, not only to keep him from getting elected, but the sensationalism sells. Let me ask you this: with this, would you agree that this particular time that the psyops, especially with the results from actions from COVID-19, it's pretty much worldwide today?
Absolutely. I would say that it is.
So who do you think has the power, the money, and influence to persuade and implement this on a worldwide level? It's not Russia.
No,
it's not China.
No.
So
I think it's a pan-Euro American group that has socialist one world economy, a one world kind of law agenda.
Now, so if a socialist one world economy and agenda exists, what socialist system is implemented worldwide and has the power and money to pull this off? The central banking systems.
The corporatists.
I'm thinking, and 40% of all international corporations are owned by the banks. And every country in the world has a central bank today. I think the last 9 countries that didn't, North Korea was one of them, and the other 8 were located in the Middle East. But since we've invaded the Middle East, I don't believe there's a single country in the world that doesn't have a central bank.
That's
right. American GDP is $20 trillion a year, and some places estimate that the value of the banking czars is 200 trillion plus. The families that did the banking, and they say that 300 to 400 people control the entire world today.
Yeah.
So it's my opinion, and call it conspiracy theory or whatever, but you have to have the money, you have to have the power, and you have to have the influence. And there's only one group of people in the world today that I believe has all the requirements to pull this off.
That's true. But it seems like, I don't know, it seems like they're floundering though. I think it's, and this is my examination, as successful as they have been in some parts, they've really screwed the pooch with the unintended messages that get out and the unintended consequences that come from their actions. They try to manipulate so much that they have an oops moments that come about, some things that are the unintended things that they didn't think about. And this has been a problem, I think, for them, where they're try to exercise and show control. I wonder if they're ever going to get the lesson that they can never really fully have control.
Well, I think that that they've shown that they can have control in other countries pretty well, from the Soviet Union, Cuba to Venezuela to Germany to, there's several examples that if they succeed, they pretty much gain complete control and power. But I think that, like I said, because of the success that Bernie Sanders had at running president on the Democrat ticket, if they didn't change the rules at the super PACs and so, not super PACs, was the super delegates and so forth, that he would have actually been their nominee instead of Hillary Clinton. And that was their cue that it was time to move on to the next phase. Now, every time when you switch phases is when you see these hiccups that you're talking about. Because what you not only have to be able to accept that, this what you're taught in school about, so you have to be willing to go out and riot, burn, and loot and destroy and all of these things that are going on. Now, what's interesting about the victimhood that you had brought up earlier is if you look at psychiatry, in a dysfunctional relationship, the victim actually has the power. Yeah. And that's why they play the victim role during these things, because they know that by being the victim, they're the ones that actually have the power and control.
Well, let's take a little break, and we're going to come back and discuss a little bit more about power.
Right. Braxton was diagnosed with choroid plexus carcinoma, a brain tumor. St. Jude is helping us put away our fears. We have an amazing team that fights for the best outcome for Braxton. He has the best chance here. I don't have to worry that how much is that bag of fluid going to cost me? Can I afford it to save my child's life? The donations, they're paying for me to live every day with my son, be stress-free, and enjoy every day with him. I wish there was a word bigger than thank you, more close to the heart, because thank you's not enough. They've given me hope. They've given me my son.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Now, we're talking a little bit about power, and of course, I think probably the biggest power on the planet is economic tools and military might. Okay. So increasingly, according to the RAND study again, you have to rely on economic leverage as the preferred tool of the strong, and it often exploits ethnic and religious bonds as well as social divisions or other internal seams. And those seams where it says that are pulling apart, they try to empower that tribe, that group, that collective as the victims.
Well, I can give you an example of Christianity. Again, I'm going to refer back to Russia. I can't give you the exact dates, unfortunately. I'm terrible with dates. But Russian Christianity isn't based on the logic of the Age of Reason. It's basically what we have today in this country is basically Russia had as Christianity. And what they did was export it to South America and Central America. That's how you ended up with all of these guerrillas, Sandinistas, paramilitary groups and so forth. And it came straight up from the South to the North to our country.
Mm-hmm.
And they've infiltrated the Christian religion, which is the founding philosophy of the country, via those means. It's obvious that the results of the Russian Christianity, the fruit that it bears, is poison.
Yes. Yeah. That is
that's
true.
What they've done. Come from the South, took their priests and their parishioners and implemented their brand of Christianity into Central and South America, and then imported it up to us. So there's no phase of our life, from the foods we eat to the radio to television to social media to banking systems to education and soon to be healthcare, that the government isn't getting control of.
That's true.
Trump has a Trump bill in the works. That's, if you're a Republican and you don't like socialism, how can you support rent reform, welfare reform, unemployment reform, universal basic income, universal health care?
Mm-hmm.
How can you support these things and come to me and say, I am not for socialism. I'm voting for Trump.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
sorry, that's the way it is. It's the way it is.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right on that. And to wrap up today, go and explain how to the people that are listening, tell them how this disinformation has really come to a head, especially for what's going on in November 3rd, because I know you're probably coming in, the wind is really kicking up out there.
Yeah, I apologize, guys. Unfortunately, we don't have the best equipment in the world, and I have ADHD, so for me to sit still for more than 2 minutes is nearly impossible.
Well, that, and I'm watching the wind is really kicking out there too. I saw this blowing the hairs of your head. I know that's a problem I have. Out quite a bit.
Yeah, those whiskers move though, don't they?
That's true. That's true. Now, in coming up November 3rd, we've got this election that's coming up. Explain to the listeners why this message we're trying to get out today is so important, especially when framed by what's going on for this election.
It's because this has been going on for so long, and it's moving into the latter stages. And it's actually eroding our freedoms in front of our eyes with the support of the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, rent reform, welfare reform, tuition reform, universal basic income. You could go on with 20 other things that have been implemented that are not the responsibility of government. They're being done with the support of the people.
That's right. That's right.
So you have the left side supporting socialism and the right side against it. But when the right side implements socialism, it's okay. There's two sides of the same coin, folks. Just like I said earlier, the Republicans introduced the bills that Woodrow Wilson signed into law. But let's go back and look at the results of the laws that were created with the formation of the central bank and the Internal Revenue Service. We now have, like I said, in every country, but we also have world banks. We have an International Monetary Fund that when countries get in trouble financially, go in and lend money to the countries with interest. And when they can't pay it back, they come in and say, well, that's okay. You just write a couple of laws in our favor, and we're gonna give you an extension to pay. Yes, the interest is accumulating, and you can't pay now, and you won't be able to pay then. So they not only they have the World Green Bank to save the world from global warming. Everything they can. I think they're trying to make world banks for these vaccines now. I mean, it's pretty. I'd say it was, call it a conspiracy theory or whatever. But when you look at the evidence that exists, you can see there's no doubt that as our liberties decrease, the power and influence of the banks are increasing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know,
Okay.
I don't think
Well,
there's other countries. It's got to be. They don't have the power. They don't. Most countries don't have $20 trillion a year as GDP.
no.
$20 trillion a year GDP isn't enough to push these things on a world scale.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true.
It's not.
No. Well, this weekend we've got the Gun and Knife Show at Myrtle Beach Convention Center. We're going to try. I've got a few more phone calls to make to the convention center. We're going to try to do a broadcast of our Saturday program at 10:30 from the convention center, if they're going to allow us to do so. We've already, with negotiations, we found out that we cannot do it inside the convention center during the show. We can do it from the hallway outside. Possibly. So we've got a few rules and regulations that they're going to be giving us. Hopefully we're going to be able to do that. Like to invite everybody to come down. I'll be working the South Carolina carry booth that's there. I have the 2018 version, but I encourage people who are gun owners or interested in that live here in South Carolina to get this book that is put out by Stephen Shaw. He usually does it every year. He's a PhD, and it's a South Carolina gun law book, and it's really good. He keeps it updated. I'd like to get him on the program. I think you and I will probably see if we can interview Dr. Shaw sometime coming up. And we welcome everybody to come and visit us. We're going to have a short little, ending the show, we're going to have a short little appeal to let people know how you can help support us. As you can tell that Jeff and I tried to do some reading and research for topics that we think will interest you and keep you abreast of what's going on. Something that you won't be catching in most of your news channels and mainstream media. Jeff, is there anything you want to say before we take off?
Yes, I'd like to add that, with the current situation in the city and county with the violent crimes occurring on average once per week,
mm-hmm.
that arming yourselves is the only way to protect yourselves. Average police response times, I don't know about the city, but nationally are over 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that means that if you're in trouble and you call police, they're most likely not going to get there in time to help you.
True.
And
True.
the Supreme Court has already ruled that they're under no obligation to protect the individual anyway. So if you call and you wait 4 hours and they never show up, oh well, they've done nothing wrong.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
So, but arming yourselves and exercising your Second Amendment right is to help protect you from the bad guys, and it's very important that we understand and do that for our own benefits, for protect our property and ourselves.
Yes. And just another reminder to the people of Myrtle Beach, I'll be running for South Carolina House 107 seat. I consider myself the conservative alternative, the better candidate. Somebody else is out there trying to say that they're conservative and are trying to preserve your gun rights. I wear the hat. I go to the shows. I work the booths. Enough said. Anyway, say good night. Good day, Jeff. We'll be seeing you later.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Enjoyed it.
All right. Take care. If you enjoy these podcasts, please press like, subscribe, and then share them with your friends. We would greatly appreciate any financial support you can give us. Go to porcupinepundit.com and become a patron or a supporter. You can also buy stuff from us at our Freedom Swag shop.
And now...
Hey, Rocky! Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat!
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto!
Wrong hat.
I take a 7.5.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.